In Greek mythology, death and disease and all those nasty things were thrust upon humanity as retribution. In the case of the Greeks, it was Zeus punishing humanity for having gotten the gift of fire from Prometheus. You know the story. Pandora was created, given a box and told not to open it, got curious, and then unwittingly unleashed a horde of negative aspects of life onto humanity. Similar to the Greeks, the Mirren's explanation of death, sickness, etc. is a story of vengeance, specifically Ēqad's vengeance against the gods of Omet. Let's go over some basic information. This story is the last of the series of primordial myths, myths so old that they are all very well established in Mirrenist canon. After this, I will be moving away from the myths for a while to focus on some more historical texts, such as the unification of Mirror by Negeb and his life story, or the rise to prominence of the first prophet Hesde. It will be a fun time, I assure you. Anyway, The Advent of Death was finished on November 20th, 2019, as my 14th story. Again, being a primordial myth, there is no set in-world date for when this all happened, only getting as specific as a very long time ago. With that boring stuff out of the way, let's meet the cast, shall we? Central to this myth, just like in the last one, is Ēqad, and, just like the last myth, he causes lots of trouble. In this case, however, he mainly causes trouble to the actual people of Keshaz, only disturbing the gods indirectly. Joining Ēqad is his wife, Izunu, and their offspring. They have 8 sons, 7 of which are not big ugly spiders, and only 2 of which really matter for this story. Ēqad's 5th son, Tasben, the god of illness and disease, and Ēqad's 8th and youngest son, Sedavam, the god of death. The others contribute to the massive death toll wrought on the people of Keshaz, but it is primarily the work of Tasben and Sedavam that causes the deaths of 1/3 of all humans. In addition to the sons of Ēqad, known canonically as the Ēqadadu, Yamashita features in the story, along with a minor appearance by Aule. There are several other gods mentioned, including the rest of the Ēqadadu, who will be named shortly, and the gods of burial, who are named Zebesh, Kolmek, Imshur, Uzu, and Berjid. As you can probably tell from what those last gods were the gods of, this story does require a bit of a gore warning. There's lots of talk about death, just look at the title, and a portion where Yamashita details how to bury someone properly, where he gets into the specifics of what to do with certain organs. That's about it on that front, so let's get into the story. The story actually starts right where the competition left off, with Ēqad and Izunu having just been thrown out of Omet. Ēqad lands on Mount Garod, getting partially skewered by the mountain, and Izunu lands in the river Sineb, so she stumbles around in unimaginable pain for quite a while. Not a good landing for either of them, I'll tell you that. The text says something interesting in this first paragraph, too. When Ēqad bled from his wound, his blood did not dissolve the ground of Ubejesh. He had lost his soul. The couple convene on top of Mount Garod and decide to build a palace from which to develop schemes. They do this and then start popping out kids. Each of their children, they decide, would embody a different horror they'd like to unleash on the people of Keshaz. What did the mortals do to make Ēqad and Izunu mad? Nothing, really. They were prime targets, though, because they were Yamashita's beloved creation, and Ēqad figured that if he went directly for the gods, they would smite him into oblivion. So, better to play it safe. Ēqad and Izunu's first child is a major fail. Katanas is born with 8 legs and 8 eyes, covered in black hair, and has massive fangs. Ēqad is disgusted and banishes Katanas to the forests and mountains of Keshaz. The text describes this odd occurrence to Izunu having drunk some of the water in Ubejesh. Even though she didn't need to, because she's immortal, she figured it might help make the baby stronger. Boy, was she wrong. Their second child is much more in their image. Ujaldij is born, soon becoming the god of jealousy and strife. Third, they have Yukolv, who becomes the god of wrath and hatred. Fourth is Zenlik, the god of lies and deceit. You get a good glimpse into what sorts of things the Mirrens hate and fear most with Ēqad's children. The evil duo's 5th child is Tasben. Tasben is one of the 2 most influential gods that came from Ēqad and Izunu's union. He becomes the god of sickness and disease, and while he can't outright kill anyone quite yet, he could cause people immense suffering, which was exactly what Ēqad and Izunu wanted. Later on, when Tasben grows up, he spawns the Tazquaz, a host of minor gods of different diseases, including some real nasty ones like Blackfinger, Yellow Vein, the Stone Skin Disease, and even one that turns the digestive tract into mush. But that's for another story, and another video. Ēqad and Izunu's 6th child is Escobar, who ends up being the god of contradiction. This is a fascinating one because, like I said earlier, it gives a glimpse into the collective cultural mind of the Mirrens. Even his name comes from the words for good and bad, Gabari and Yesneki. 7th is Hamadan, who becomes the god of sadness. He ends up creating an army of spirits called the Mortgulas, who float around bringing despairing, depressing thoughts to everyone in their vicinity. So yeah, basically Dementors, but without the kiss. Finally, Ēqad and Aizunu's eighth child, Sedavam, the god of death, the grim reaper of Mira, the one that allows all of his siblings' horrors to end painfully and miserably. Tasben and Sedavam become the closest of siblings, seeing as how they work together so well. With everyone ready, Ēqad and Aizunu release their progeny onto the mortals, with devastating consequences. Ujaldij causes lots of thefts and a few killings, Yukov splits families, Zenlik pulls these fighting families into lying, Escobar confuses all the politicians, Tasben unleashes a massive, far-reaching plague, and Sedavam cleans up after his brothers. The two things that hit the remaining two-thirds of the population are that they are no longer immortal, and that the dead had no rest because their souls were stuck in their rotting bodies. No proper system of burial had been established because it wasn't necessary. Aule approaches Yamashita about this, and Yamashita comes up with a plan. First, Yamashita instructs Aule to be the final judge for humanity. Every soul will come to Aule and be assessed. If they are worthy, Aule will allow them into Omet. If not, he will throw them down to Ubejesh, where Ēqad will do who knows what to them. Then, after Aule asks how the souls will get up there in the first place, Yamashita says that he will approach the Miran political and religious leaders in a dream and instruct them on how to properly bury everyone. So, Yamashita sends out a mass dream, and he says that, while he cannot reverse the damage that has been done, he can help them. He tells them that everyone will be judged when they die, and those who led good, selfless lives will get to live with the gods in Omet. Those who didn't, however, will be cast into Ubejesh. He goes on to say that a person can only be judged if they are properly buried, and then details how this must be done. This is the part that the gore warning was about, by the way. I'll give you a moment to click off if you want. Alright, let's dissect this burial process. I took inspiration from the mummification process for the Miran burial process, and that will become evident shortly. Firstly, the corpse must be placed on a table with an incline. The neck is cut to allow all the blood to drain out, and it does so into a glass jar. The jar is supposed to remain open for a while until all the blood has dried, because only then has the soul actually fully escaped. Then, the person's face is supposed to be drawn on a pasakra, or a thin wooden board used mostly for writing when that gets invented later on. The only reason for this part is so his descendants can remember him. Theoretically, you could get away with not doing it, but why would you do that? Next, the organ removal. First, the heart is removed and dedicated to Zebesh. Then, the stomach is removed and dedicated to Kolmek. The skull is cut open and the brain is removed and dedicated to Imshur, and these three organs are placed in a small box called a nembachet, which is set off to the side. The bones are all carefully picked out and grinded up into powder, which is dumped on top of the organs in the nembachet and dedicated to Uzu. Finally, the rest of the organs are dedicated to Berjid, and what's left of the corpse is burned and turned to ashes. The nembachet is to be taken to a place reserved for the dead, and Yamashita calls this an evlube, but it's really just a cemetery. The box is to be buried, and a stone is supposed to mark its place, accompanied by the drawing of the deceased. In a time before writing, the drawing is a lot more important than it otherwise would be. Yamashita concludes his dream with the proclamation that, yes, death will sting, but if you've been good and the person you wish to see again has been good, you'll reunite in Omet. The political and religious leaders of the cities along the Nuke all awake and realize what they have to do, so they instruct the warring populace to lay down their weapons and collaborate to get this job done. Amazingly, everyone obeys, and this display of human resolve is basically a giant middle finger to Ēqad. The dead are treated with the utmost respect, and the text ends by saying that both Omet and Ubejesh gained their first human inhabitants that day. Well, that was morbid, but we're all finished with that story now. It's functionally the end of the primordial myths, concluding a long story arc that establishes the personalities of the gods and goddesses of Mira. There are other myths and legends, including the gods, but we're going to take a break from that and move on to some more historical documents. Kings, wars, cults, all that good stuff. So, that will all be coming shortly. But before that, I have a special video planned, so be sure to stay tuned for that one. See you all in the next